Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining today. We're happy to have you all here. We'll get started in just another minute. Allow for some other people to join us. This session does involve some interaction and engagement, so you can feel free to keep your camera on or shut it off as you wish. I can just share a little bit about our session format. So we'll get started with Saskia doing some guided meditation for us to get kind of framed up for this conversation. And then we'll go into some content with an opportunity to enter into a breakout room later on. We will have one breakout room dedicated for those who are just joining to listen only. So I'll open them up and you can choose which one you'd like to go to. So no need if you just came to listen to feel, intimidated by a breakout room session as part of this discussion today. But we have some Menti to kind of hear from you about some of the topics you're thinking about on this subject as well. So we're really looking forward to having your voice be a part of today's session in whatever format feels correct for you today. Thank you so much. All right, I will introduce our topic. So thank you all for joining us today. Today's topic is Environmental Sustainability Climate Action Network for International Educators, also known as CANIE. We're joined, of course, by Daniel Ponce Taylor here today. And what really makes a difference. So I am looking forward to learning alongside of all of you. I'll introduce myself here on our next slide. We'll be together for about an hour. I'm Molly Stern. I'm the Global Up Manager at AFS Intercultural Programs. And Saskia, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm the program manager at AFS for our Global STEM Changemakers initiative and also for the Global U Changemaker program. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks so much for helping us with today's session, Saskia. And Daniel Ponce Taylor, he is a Sustainability and Strategic Partnerships Director for Intercultural Outreach Initiative. He has several other accolades that I will describe in a later slide. But he will really be helping us dive more into the content on both CANIE and some sustainability efforts that are taking place in the field of international education. So thank you so much, Danny, for joining us today. All right, well, we'll kick off with Saskia helping us kind of get warmed up for this conversation today.
All right, so we're going to have a lot of wonderful, dense information coming up. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of lightness and feeling present and grounded so that we can move forward after this. So to start, make sure you're comfortable. You can be sitting if it's late for you and you're on your sofa, that's fine too. Whatever the position needs to be, make sure your back feels supported. And you're welcome to keep your video on or off. That's not important for this exercise, but it is important to take away visual stimulation. So either closing your eyes or looking down towards the floor, but just not at the screen. I won't be demonstrating anything, so you just need to hear my voice. So once you find that comfortable seat and close your eyes, I invite you to take 5 deep breaths and see if you can do that very slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth or through your nose, whatever is more comfortable for you. Yeah, so just 5 breaths like that. If you've done 1 or 2, keep going. If you lose count, that's okay. Just come back to it. Keep going until you reach your 5th exhale. Good, and then you can let the counting go. And with your eyes still closed, I'd like you to visualize a place that you love. It can be in nature or near nature, but somewhere from your memory, perhaps a recent memory, maybe from a long time ago, somewhere beautiful and peaceful in the world that you really love and that you associate with being in nature. Just take a moment to bring that place into your mind. And you can use your senses. So, what do you see in this place? What colors, what shapes, what objects, what elements of nature? With your mind's eye, just looking around, seeing what you see in this peaceful place. And notice what you might feel in this place on your skin. Like, what's the temperature of the air? Is it a warm summer day? Maybe it's that perfect kind of summer day when it's not too hot and not too cold. Maybe it's winter. Maybe winter is peaceful for you. And what sounds do you hear? So maybe it's an early summer morning. What sounds of nature do you associate with that? Perhaps it's a winter evening and the silence that comes with that. So what you see, what you feel, and also any sounds that you hear. And in this place, who are you with? So when you're in this peaceful, natural place from your own memories, who is around you? Maybe strangers, if you're at the beach, or maybe people you love, maybe a person you love, maybe you're on your own. So if you could imagine this perfect day in nature, who would you be with? And you can visualize that person or those people with you. And what memories does this place hold for you? Why is this the place that you chose?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
And how does your heart feel when you're in this place? You can even put your hand on your heart if that's helpful and kind of feel the space around your heart. When you're visualizing being in this place, does it feel light? Is there space? How does your heart feel when you're imagining being here? And maybe take a moment to imagine walking around this place, or if you're lying down, maybe stretching out, looking around, and just refamiliarize yourself with all of the reasons why you love this place, why it makes you feel good, why you feel at peace here. And for a moment, we'll let go of the present, and you can take a big breath here in through your nose and let that go. And we'll move to the past. So imagine all that was required for this place that you love to exist. If you think back 10 days ago, maybe there's people maintaining the place, maybe people protecting it. And if you go back further, maybe years, maybe laws were passed so that this place could exist and stay clean and beautiful. And if you go back 1,000 years or 10,000 years, think of all that had to happen in the universe. In the perfect moment of everything coming together to create this beautiful place that you love in nature. And see if you can expand your mind a bit and fathom everything that had to happen for you to enjoy this place. And then take another breath consciously in through your nose and out through your nose. And we'll move to the future. So what would be required to keep this place the way it is, the way that you love it? What would it take for future generations to also make memories here? And it might be helpful to imagine you're now face to face with a future someone, maybe let's say in the year 3000, 2099 maybe. When you're gone, so there's this person in the future, maybe your descendant, maybe someone, just a stranger that you'll never know. What might this person tell you about their needs from you in order to keep this place the way it is? What is one thing you could do this week, this month, this year, maybe daily, to ensure that the planet stays beautiful? What's one thing you could do now that might never impact you directly, but will impact this person? And you can imagine them sitting in front of you, asking you, please do this. Not for yourself, but for me. And then you can let the future go and take a breath. And for one last time, come back to this place that you love, this peaceful place in nature. And see if you can hold it in your mind and remember what it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like, so that you can access it when you're restless, when you're sad, when you can't sleep. And maybe find some gratitude that you're able to visualize this place, that you have a living example to pull from the world. And we'll end with 5 breaths. So just take 5 more slow breaths. And when you are ready, slowly come back. And take your time. And so I'll just end by saying that visualization and meditation, it may seem disconnected from everything that's about to be discussed, but these exercises can help us to broaden our sense of time, you know, and think about decisions that don't just affect us, but affect people that we'll never know. And it connects us with our emotions, and all of our actions and decisions that affect sustainability and the climate, they have to be connected to our emotional capacities, and which is connected to our judgment and so many other things. And if we want to make a difference in this field, I think we have to connect to why we want to make a difference in the first place. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Saskia. That was a really, really powerful and special way to start this. So thank you for bringing your talent of doing guided meditations and finding one that really fit this topic. That was beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so going back to why did we think about this topic for International Education Week, and what brings you to this session? You know, when we're discussing topics and what could be really meaningful, one of the things that I've really learned from our presenter today, Danny, is just we have a direct role in the field of international education in sending people around the world. We have sites, relationships, and programs that will inevitably be drastically impacted by the effects of climate change. We aim to do the least harm possible while developing students, staff, faculty, global competence in transformational ways. Sometimes that includes visiting countries outside of our own. So how do we make the most of these opportunities when we are, getting on a flight or having to, travel to these places, but really keeping in mind like what we're aiming to do. So before I turn it over to Danny, I'd like to give a little bit more of an introduction to him and why he is such an expert on this topic. As I said, he is the Sustainability and Strategic Partnership Director at Intercultural Outreach Initiative. He's the co-chair of the NASA Sustainability SIG, and he is the vice president of the CANIE European chapter. So I'm so excited to hear more about what his work involves with both IOI and CANIE today. So Danny, I will pass the mic to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you, Saskia. I mean, I think as I was listening to your guided meditation and breathing, I was thinking like, that it really kind of actually ties very well into what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about that place that we can imagine, and we want to keep that way. And I'm going to be talking about a bit of a sense of urgency that we kind of must act soon, but at the same time, hopefully a bit of hope, so we can keep that place. As we envisage, as we kind of imagine it, and as we visualize it, and so hopefully those two things kind of are clear through the chat today. Please feel free to add any questions you have on the chat. We want to make it as engaging, as interactive as possible. We have a couple, as Molly says, a couple of sessions, a couple of sections of the session for you guys to interact should you wish to. So let's keep that. There's two concepts of urgency, but also hope. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to kind of to show you a couple platforms, a couple initiatives that are out there, so we don't reinvent the wheel every time, and that we can learn from others that are doing some amazing work on this kind of area of environmental sustainability, climate action in international education. But I guess the first thing is take responsibility for action. And we wanted to start by seeing where we are. What's the knowledge that we have. Also helps me to see if I need to put a little bit more emphasis on certain concepts or not. So if you can, you want to, if you want to kind of get your mobile devices, your cell phones, and use this QR code, it will take you to a Menti page with a couple of questions. that we would like you to answer if you want to. And Molly will just go to that one. So if you want to go first to the QR code, just in case not everyone was able to grab it, so just go one slide up. You can just just one up. Okay, there you go. Just to make sure that everyone's got the QR code. And then code is, I'll put it here in case you need it. But if everyone's got it, I think we've got some people coming in. I can't see how many people have joined in, but anyway, the first thing is what comes to mind when you think of sustainability? It doesn't have to be related to international education. It can be just as a general term. What is it that you think when it comes to sustainability? When you think of sustainability, just one word, or maybe a couple of quick words. As you type, hopefully we'll see a beautiful word cloud. Please, if anyone's having any issues with the Menti, just type it on the chat. Okay, to repeat in time: nature, awareness, care, community, leaving no trace. Okay, impact. Okay, so the idea with these word clouds is as a word gets mentioned several times, then it kind of becomes larger. Now, the reality is sometimes we use similar words, so it doesn't always work the same way. But I like the society and environment there, and community. I'll talk about sustainability definition in a second, but I'm using a more kind of broader, holistic way of defining sustainability, not just environmental sustainability solely, although that is as important as the other two aspects of sustainability. And there was one there, what was it that I was, reduce harm and leave no trace. Okay, so, and there's one there, regeneration, which I really like that, and I'll come back to regeneration in a few slides. Green, long lasting. Okay, emissions, obviously we'll talk about them. Okay, cool, that's fantastic. All right, so let's go to the next question. So the next one is, do you feel sustainability is part of your institution's identity? For those of you who are part of an institution, please kind of obviously feel free to okay. And if anyone is keen and wants to kind of give us a couple of reasons why, kind of a yes on the chat, then that'd be also fantastic if anyone wants to kind of expand on that, only if you want to. Okay, so we've got everyone is kind of or yes. All right, that's good. Okay, the next one, for those of you working directly with students, which I assume most of you are, do you feel sustainability is part of your students' identity? Yes, kind of no. Oh, interesting. Okay. And maybe it's something we can chat about later on, but it'd be interesting to hear from those that say no, especially newer generations, if you feel that they're not acting sustainably, or that they don't believe that those are values that they are part of their nature. Because I do feel that there's this sort of disconnect between people, especially younger generations' values and actions. So I kind of agree a little bit with that. Okay, kind of yes, no's. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And what about yours? What about your identity? Do you feel sustainability is part of your identity? Okay. So most of you, yes. I assume that's one of the reasons why you are attending this session, which is fantastic. Okay, we have a note, which is fantastic as well. Hopefully I can at least provide some ideas and some rationale why we should consider sustainability in international education at least. Okay, so I think that was let's leave it there. If you guys don't mind, we'll leave that question, but thank you for filling the next one, but we'll leave that question for later on. So thanks for those who already do that. So the reason why we wanted to ask those questions was to see who we had on the Zoom room, or the Zoom chat and the Zoom presentation, but also kind of because I think that, you know, in order to really to start implementing, aligning sustainability ideas, concepts, and strategies in international education, first of all, we need to kind of align our beliefs with our actions. And, you know, especially like not only kind of our own one, but our institutions and also our participants, i.e. our students. So I think it's important to kind of to see where we are in respect of those kind of alignment and importance. If we don't feel it's important enough or it's valuable enough, it's difficult for us to actually to implement it wholehearted. I think that's why, you know, I wanted to ask, you know, or start with those questions. So obviously, when we talked about it, when I asked, you know, what came to mind from sustainability, there was a lot of different answers there. So I wanted to start with a definition of sustainability. It's not the only definition, but at least we're all on the same page. So first of sustainability in itself, which, as it says here, sustainability is the long-term maintenance and enhancement of human well-being within finite planetary resources. So that's kind of like the sort of the standard definition by the UN. It normally has this that we call the three legs, or the three legs of the stool of sustainability. We've got the environmental, the economic, and the social dimension. And I think that's important to think that is a balance between those three aspects. And the other word that sometimes gets kind of confused with sustainability is sustainable development. And as it's defined by the United Nations, sustainable development promotes prosperity and economic opportunity, greater social well-being, and protection of the environment. And the UN members states agree that sustainable development offers the best path forward for improving the lives of people everywhere. And the way I see it, sustainable development is a pathway towards sustainability, to get to sustainability. Now, I want to mention that sustainability as a concept is a very human-centric concept. Someone mentioned on the word cloud, you know, leave no trace or do no harm, but it's all with the idea that it's all kind of sustainable for us as a species, that we are able to live and to prolong our stay within this planet. Now, there's a further kind of way to look into our position in this world, and I'll mention it later on, but it is actually important to remember this is kind of like, how can we ensure that that we as humans are able to sustain the way that we live in the future? And that's what sustainability is like. It's all about, it's finding the balance between environmental, economic, and this is kind of like when you put it in an illustration, you find it between those two things. So the people, the profit or the economy, and the planet or the environment, and sustainability is there in the middle. Now, some of you might be familiar with the concept of the platform of the UN SDGs. So for those of you who are not familiar with the UN SDGs, I'm not really going to go into, you know, a lot of detail, but the UN SDGs are this kind of set of goals, global goals, that were defining just before 2015, but started officially in 2015 to 2030, and it's part of what's called the UN 2030 agenda. And there's 17 goals that kind of stem from the Millennium Development Goals, which pre-2015. And basically, it goes from these environmental, this social, and this economic goals. And very broad, very, very ambitious, very bold. Every goal has a set of targets. And the idea is that these goals are to be contributed by all nations, all companies, everyone around it. As I said, we have 7 years now to achieve these. So there's the sense of urgency. And, you know, in all fairness, like the 7 years prior, or 7.5, or nearly 8 years that we've had, haven't been as, you know, we've done a good amount of work, but haven't really done as much as we should have. The way, this is something you might have seen before, like this sort of flat illustration of the 17 SDGs, 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The way I like to see them, though, is this in this more kind of integration way. We call that, or I haven't actually named it, but there's this institute in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and they've called it the wedding cake kind of version. Basically, it kind of showcases a little bit, in my opinion, the connectivity between the biosphere or the environmental sustainable development goals, the society, and the economy, and how kind of it's all kind of joined by goal 17, which is partnerships for the goals. It's kind of like it's very well visualized in this next video that it's done by this institute in Copenhagen, and where kind of he shows that interconnectivity, where sort of economies and societies are embedded as part of the biosphere. I think that's the way I like to see this goals, this global goals, the sustainable development goals, in this more interconnected, holistic approach towards sustainability, rather than this flat kind of no connectivity between the different goals. So here you can see kind of like the environmental one, the society now, and then on top of that, we'll see now the economy, and then kind of joining them, we'll see SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. There we go. Cool. So that was just a little kind of brief introduction to the SDGs. I hope, well, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the UN SDGs, but I thought they were important because we're going to be talking about CANIE and climate action, which kind of, it's part of this kind of SDGs. SDG 13 in particular is climate action, and having this sort of like global context, or these global platforms and tools, kind of one of the, with all its flaws, and it does have quite a few flaws, the SDGs, at least it allows us to talk with the same vocabulary. It gives us a common narrative, a common vocabulary that we can use within the field, also internally within our institutions, when we talk to partners, whether agents or partners on the ground, all stakeholders. It gives us this common common semantics and common narrative, and I think it's important. So we're not just talking about different things. We use this common language. Now, I wanted to briefly mention IOI, Intercultural Outreach Initiative, because I think it's very relevant to CANIE, to Climate Action Network, and how we got to that point. Why I think CANIE is a tool that is it would be very useful for most of you in your own institutions and work. So very briefly, we are a small non-for-profit 501c3 working in Galapagos and Cuba, even though Cuba right now is a little bit on hold for, sadly, political reasons. But basically, we have as in our core, in our values, and not in our core, in how we started, we're not an international education organization per se. We are actually a sustainable development organization that started working on international education later on. So I guess we have a little bit of an easy way into sustainability, because we don't have to, make our programs sustainable. All our programs are sustainable by nature, and that's why for us it was very important to take into account our role in carbon emissions and how can we mitigate them, and that's why we got into CANIE. So yeah, for us it's part of our nature. Having said that, sustainability for us it's a stepping stone, and as you'll see on the next slide, we use sustainability and the SDGs as a way to get to a more regenerative mindset. And I'm very happy to see that someone actually typed regenerative on the mind map. But for us, we don't see it as the end goal, sustainability or the SDGs. We see that as a way, as I said, to use a common narrative, to use a common language, but to move towards this more regenerative development. And I love this illustration, because it kind of just shows the journey from a more degenerative cultures, conventional cultures, where kind of, where we kind of, we just basically, doing a lot of harm, to move into more green ways of acting, to doing sustainable way of being, which basically we add in no additional harm, but really no good either, to this kind of more restorative and then regenerative mindset, where we kind of, us humans, then become a little bit more embedded in nature and in the system, rather than just kind of us kind of controlling it. So I'd like you to just keep that in mind moving forward, that the SDGs, sustainability is not the end goal. It's just more, for me, the way I say it's a stepping stone. It's a bridge towards this regenerative mindset, regenerative development. And the why this is important is because we at IOI, apart from having sustainability in the core of what we do, we kind of very early on realized that, well, people come to Galapagos. Well, that has a huge impact on the planet. We can do a lot of good work on the ground, but people fly, and flying has a huge CO2 contribution. So SDG 13, climate action, we're not doing well. So we, as part of this regenerative mindset that we have within the organization, and having sustainability as the core of what we do, we thought, okay, how can we then start thinking a little bit further into changing that negative impact and making it positive? So what we did is we came with this carbon negative strategy, a couple of years ago. And basically, we started first of all, we started measuring. We measured everything, from our office emissions. Granted, we are a small institution, so we work in Isabella, one of the islands in Galapagos, which has a small carbon footprint. All our electricity comes from renewables. We don't have an office of Galapagos. Myself and Johan working in Hawaii, we work from home, so we measured that as well, the percentage of energy that we use, any flying that we did for conferences or for sessions, all the programs that we had on the ground. All our volunteers and participants and students stay at homestays or hotels, hostels, if that's what's needed. So we measured all that, transport, everything. And then we basically what we did is we started saying, okay, first of all, how can we reduce it? That was the first thing. How can we reduce what we actually emit? Once we kind of reduce as much as possible or avoid it as much as possible, how can we mitigate it? How can we take responsibility? And mitigation, and I'll talk about that later on, there are many ways. The standard is offsetting. I pay someone, wherever that might be, and boom, that's it. I've mitigated my emissions. But we were like, no, that doesn't sit well for us. We want to take responsibility as much as possible. So we started working on a regenerative agriculture program. And regenerative agriculture, without going into a lot of details, basically is a technique of agriculture where doesn't use kind of tilling, doesn't use mechanical moving of the earth, and basically carbon has been proved that carbon sinks into the soil. So it becomes kind of like this sink of soil, and then basically, there are some great documentaries out there. It becomes a carbon sink, and as such, we can calculate the amount of carbon that we are actually sinking, and we can use that as a way to mitigate or offset. And we call it active offsetting because we actually taking responsibility with. We're not just paying someone for the flights of our students and faculty coming to Galapagos. Now, we're very realistic, and we don't want to lie about this. There's still going to be an amount that we're not able to actually offset internally. So we actually use some offsetting externally. But on top of that, because of the regenerative agriculture, not only the regenerative agriculture sinks or the carbon stays in the soil, but also we avoid transporting food from mainland Ecuador to Galapagos. And that's been calculated that, for example, every kilogram of produce not imported, it saves 50 grams of CO2, for example. So that can be calculated as well, and that can be put into our equations. So we were like, okay, we need to take responsibility. We're going to measure, we're going to minimize, we're going to actually reduce, and we're going to offset as much, or internally offset. Some people call it insetting our emissions. So we were doing this journey, and we were like, man, this is hard. And why isn't there why are there more people doing more things? And that's where I found out about CANIE. And CANIE is this kind of it stands for the Climate Action Network for International Educators. Basically, it's a group of professionals within international education, all volunteers, that we see the value of international education. We see the potential of changing, opening mindsets, lifelong behavioral changes, which is really the biggest carbon offset in it. So if we change people's mindset, people's way of acting down the road. So we see that value, but we also see a big issue that we're not dealing with. You know, some people call it the elephant in the room. For me, it doesn't matter what semantics it is, but the reality is that for many years we've not talked about it, because we're kind of afraid that if we talk about it, we won't be able to do what we love and what we feel is important. But we think as CANIE that no, we should take responsibility, and we should actually talk about it and see how we deal with this issue. So CANIE has three main focus areas. The first one is policy and advocacy, and it's influence around climate policies, advocate for this kind of commitments around climate action, education and connection. So we do a lot of webinars, a lot of sessions, so we as professionals are aware of this issue, and then kind of talk about how can these actions be scaled through all the different operations and programs that are out there. And that's where the CANIE Accord came on board, which I will mention in a second. Next one, please. For those of you interested in the future, CANIE works in chapters. We've got an Oceania chapter, we've got an Americas chapter, we've got Europe chapter. We don't have an Africa chapter just yet, but it'd be great to have one. And the Asia one is kind of like, I think those are working in Oceania as well. You can join. There's monthly meetings, there's sessions, there's learnings, and it's as I said, it's all volunteer based, and you can go there as a just to hear what's happening, but also you can participate. So the CANIE Accord, and I will share this slide. So I see someone's asking about the slides. So I'll share the slide, so you don't need to go into it. But this is just to go into the actual website where the CANIE Accord is. The CANIE Accord is this document that we put together a couple of years ago, and also kind of like there was like an adjoining paper that sort of supports the Accord. And the idea is that it basically it's a document where organizations, institutions, departments, schools, volunteer organizations, NGOs can kind of commit to a series of actions. And it basically has three purposes. Well, it has three principles. The first one is that we must take immediate action. The second one is that in order to work towards climate action, we need to collaborate, innovate, and educate. And the third one is that climate solutions should also advance social justice. And I know AFS has done quite a few sessions on social justice around climate action. Those two things are super, they work together. The CANIE Accord on the next one is divided into a couple kind of sections. And basically the first three are those kind of principles and definitions. And then the following ones, Article 4 to Article 8, have a series of up to 70 actions that you as an institution can choose to say, hey, I'm committing to these actions. In order to sign up, you need to select a minimum of 5 climate actions spanning within 3 of these articles 4 to 8. And then what you do is once you choose the action, you select where you think you currently are. Am I on basic? Am I on better? Or am I on best? And then the idea is on a year-to-year basis, you reevaluate your actions. Am I working towards those? Have I improved in my standing in that action? Can I add any actions to my commitment? And the reason why I think a little bit similar to the SDGs, why I think this is a great platform, a great tool, is because, again, what it helps us put together this climate action plan for our institution, for our school, but also it helps us talk or help us use the same semantics, the same vocabulary, the same narrative. We actually all talk in the same language. And again, if we all start talking the same language, it's more likely that we're going to be able to work towards the same goals and actually collectively achieve them. So if you go on the next slide, yeah, you have to, in order to sign, you agree to the purpose and principles of the Accord. And as I said, you select 5 climate actions out of the 3 or more areas. So that's kind of like, if you think about it, that's pretty straightforward, very easy. The idea is that it's easy to get into it. we want all organizations to feel that they can contribute and they can start their climate journey. This is not about, oh, I'm doing everything, I'm actually, carbon negative. No, this is like, how do I start my climate journey? And then from that point onwards, how do I grow my climate journey? How do I improve it? How do I make it more holistic? How do I make it more appealing for my staff and my students? And how do I make it more challenging as well? Cool. It's all online. You sign up, you put all your commitments, everything, and then basically after that, you get an okay. It gets reviewed by CANIE on the next slide, and then you get it. You said it. You get an okay by email saying, "Hey, thank you so much for joining," and then it starts another part of it, which is actually sharing the fact that you are joining this accord, and you share with your contacts, with your network, because again, it's all about making people aware of this. Of the climate action that you are taking as a commitment for, and then therefore others will actually, hopefully you start influencing others. So it's all about creating a larger network. So by then you can start, you get a toolkit, which is on the next slide, and then you can start sharing your journey and your challenges as well. I think it's about being honest and being realistic about this journey. There's actually over 70 organizations that have committed to a minimum of 5 actions, from large institutions to smaller ones. And there's also, if any of you are interested, by all means, please contact me. But it doesn't have to be the whole institution. It could be a department. It could be a school. It could be an area of your institution. So it's very inclusive and very easy for everyone to join. Cool. The key thing I think I wanted to kind of to finish up before we do a quick breakout discussion is that this is not about not doing it or stopping international education. This is about actually doing international education better, to be more aware of our impact and actually improve our impact and try to mitigate and minimize any potential negative impact. So it is affirming that international education is fundamental to fostering understanding and respect amongst different people, but also to solving global problems. I think that's really it. And as it says, it's acknowledging our role within the contribution to the climate crisis, and potentially making sure that we actually not producing more carbon that we actually we're mitigating, but also taking full responsibility for it. So I think it's a combination of kind of like, hey, it is important. We do have this impact, but we want to actually be responsible for it, and we want to actually do something about it. Okay, so what we wanted to do now is we wanted to go into a breakout discussion. As Molly mentioned at the beginning, those of you who not feel up for it, that you don't want to join, that's cool. I think there'll be a couple different breakout groups, and I think one of them is actually called those of you who don't want to participate. So we're going to do, how long, Molly? We're going to have
5 minutes. It's a quick one. But yes, when we're thinking about, some of the hurdles that you shared earlier in our mentee, what hurdles you're experiencing, it could be in your NGO, your organization, your institution, in even bringing these efforts forward. When you're thinking about, how to make your programming more sustainable, what are those hurdles? And brainstorm together in these groups. What action could possibly overcome? Maybe you just want to share what the hurdle is in your group and have the group brainstorm. That's okay. But it's really helpful to have, so much wisdom in the room in these breakout sessions. So I'm hoping you see that there are a couple of different rooms that you could join, named with some, beautiful nature terms there. And then Breeze is the listener only. If you've only come to listen, you can either stay in the main room or join that group. But please go ahead and choose the word that resonates with you today, and have a discussion with your group for about the next 5 minutes.
We're going to have 5 minutes discussion, then we'll come back to the main group. And those of you who want to share some of those discussions, then please do so.
Okay.
We got 4, 3, 1. I'm going to go to Mountain, so Mountain's not. Oh, there you go. Mountain's.
I just moved him over.
Okay. I forgot that the
Welcome back, Room Ocean and Breeze. Thanks to those of you who are able to engage with the small group today. I'd love to hear, recapping, was there a theme of hurdles or actions that you heard or that were shared in your group? And Team Ocean, you can share. Was it too quick to dive in deep? Yes. Okay. Well, I'm hoping you were able to make some connections with those in your group and that maybe there was a couple ideas that you could, yes, take away. Dylan has shared, I shared time and resources are a hurdle, but others responded to start small. Yes. It's true. It can feel like you want to overhaul everything as a first step, right? And starting small can be so much more impactful, especially when you have that snowball effect of success over time too. Great. All right, Danny, I'll turn it back to you. You're on mute right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, having sort of platforms like CANIE and resources like that, it's a way to start. It can be, very, time consuming to create something like a climate action plan. Okay, well, having the CANIE Accord is a way to do it, or having the UN SDGs. But it is true, there's normally something that is just kind of, especially for international education, is sort of like, it's no one's responsibility. It's just someone who's committed to it. So you have to do it on top of your normal day to day. So it is a challenge, and we, I think it's realizing that is very important. So we wanted to finish off with a couple of concepts that are always kind of like a little bit of a maybe misunderstood, and maybe some myths around offsetting. So the first one I wanted to sort of define 3 things. One of them called carbon insetting, offsetting, and onsetting. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with this concept, but insetting is kind of like reducing carbon within your organization. So to me, that is the first thing we have to do. It's kind of like how can we reduce whatever we are using so much? So whether that's switching to renewable energy supplier, or using more efficient travel mechanisms for students, whether it's providing kind of meat-free meals, sourcing local, any of those are ideas. The second one is carbon offsetting. And carbon offsetting, as it says here, is accounting for your carbon outside of your program. So kind of like, what can I do? I emit X amount, so how can I offset it? Now, I separate or create a subcategory. I call it active versus passive offsetting. And I call it active because in some ways it uses the same mechanisms of offsetting, but you do it yourself. So instead of paying someone that may be on the other side of the world that you don't really know if it's what's happening, or you just get a report, in this case, where possible, we want to take responsibility. So I call it active offsetting. So in our case, we do regenerative agriculture, we do tree planting in Galapagos. And the last one is actually carbon onsetting. And that's basically an environmental action that does not have an exact carbon equivalency, but it's actually very important. For example, a river cleanup, biodiversity initiatives, creating local food sources. Now, all those allow you an opportunity to talk about climate action. So, and they also talk about it's a sustainability action. So it may not have a carbon equivalency, but it's an excuse to talk about it. Okay. I'm aware that we on the hour, so if you have to go, I appreciate you guys being here, but we're going to go for another 5 minutes for those of you who are able to stay, and then we can that way we can just finish with some of the some of the content. But thank you so much for those of you who have to go and attend it today. So one of the things that a lot of people talk about is offsetting, and offsetting sometimes is very misunderstood. So I wanted to go into to talk about some myths and realities. And the first one is this sort of like carbon neutrality or net zero. What are those two things? Are they the same? No, they're actually quite different. Carbon neutral is basically you go when you offset all your emissions through hopefully high quality, independently verified carbon reduction organization. Basically, whether it's avoiding, you basically avoid and you remove. That's basically the different organizations, and that's a way to take responsibility. But as I said, offside somewhere else. Where, for example, carbon, net zero, an organization reaches net zero when through a science-based, when you do a carbon reduction, a science-based carbon reduction target, and you compensate for all the remaining. So it's different. Net zero is you actually, first of all, you reduce and then you compensate for the remaining emissions through carbon removal projects. So one of them, you're doing the active exercise of, first of all, reducing to this, let's call the science-based carbon reduction target that is by industries, and then you remove. So two different concepts. The second one is kind of like people say, well, offsetting is the solution. Well, I personally don't think is the solution. I think it's part of the solution by all means, but and I actually think that without some offsetting, most institutions are not going to be able to reach net zero because there's always going to be this sort of stubborn, this sort of hard to address residual emissions. But I don't think it's like the sort of the solution, because if we just offset, we're really not taking responsibility. We just keep doing what we do, but we just pay someone else. So I think it's a good way to start, and it's part of the solution, but it's definitely not the solution. The only solution, sorry. The third one is active versus passive offsetting. I've already mentioned it before, and I won't go into it, but it's kind of one of them is kind of like paying somewhere in the other side of the world or close to us, but really not taking responsibility for it. The other one is kind of try to do those offsetting initiatives internally as much as we can. The fourth one is on this kind of offsetting or climate action is urgency. Urgency is the key word. Offsetting is a key part of the solution for now, and then we need to move towards low emissions, but we need to get going. So if offsetting is the way to get going, then fine, let's do that and then start reducing. But urgency is the key word. The other one is offsetting is an easy way into climate action. It's fairly cheap in reality, and you can see when you go flying somewhere, and most airlines actually give you an option. Hey, this is how much you can offset, and it's not much. So it is it is a cheap way to start acting and to start the conversation. Now, again, I don't think it's the only solution, but it is part of the solution. And then the last one is ethics of not taking responsibility, which is linked to that active versus passive offsetting, or just generally offsetting. Like, I feel that we should be taking responsibilities rather than just kind of paying somewhere. So I think consider that when you're thinking, what are your actions? How much responsibility can I take rather than just kind of paying somewhere off? And I wanted to show you kind of like, just to put it in context, I wanted to show you if we could really offset someone in the other side of the world just by paying. So this is data from the open, what's called the open report, the open doors report. This is pre-pandemic, so a new one was just released recently. Just for you guys to be aware of this, on average, US students are going abroad just with the flights to and from the origin, so to the destination and origin, is roughly around 16,000 kilometers on average. Now that's that may not seem a lot, but it is, as I'll show you in a second, it is a fair amount. On average, the emissions by US study abroad is actually about 3.1% of the whole institution. And that equates to more or less 1.1 million metric tons. Now, that's only US students, okay? And that does not take into account all the flights that people do when they go to, let's say, someone goes to Madrid and then every weekend they take a cheap flight to whatever it is. Well, that's not taken into account. That's just the to from their origin to the destination. So what does that mean? 1.1 million metric tons. That means nothing to you or to me, really. So here is kind of like, just to put it in perspective. It's kind of like the average. It's more or less around 245,000 cars or vehicles driven for 1 year in the US. It's more or less more than 333 million number of smartphones charged. That's quite a lot. Or 284,000 homes electricity used for 1 year. So those are fairly sizable numbers. Now, if we wanted to offset this, we would need over 18 million tree seedlings that are growing for 10 years. It's not just about planting it in 1 year, they're gone. No, 10 years kind of absorbing CO2. And that's around it says 1 million acres of US forest. What is that? Think about it, that's around 100,000 football fields, or 2 times the size of Luxembourg, which is a country in Europe. So is it really realistic for us to plant trees? And that's only for 1 year. So if you think about it, we need to reduce as much as possible before we can even consider offsetting, because we can't be planting every year, twice the size of Luxembourg. That's just not realistic anywhere in the world, really. And as I said, that's just taking into account the average flights to and from the destination, or from where they actually doing the study abroad component. So yeah, just think about that.
Sorry to interrupt you, Danny. There's a question in the chat for the source of these numbers, or in the circle deaths too.
So that's from the Open Doors.
Open Doors.
Mm-hmm. That was the pre-pandemic one. There was just released one last week, I believe, and that will have updated numbers. But yeah, I'm more than happy to share obviously the source, and that's a summary that a colleague of mine did in a paper. So yeah, so that's a fairly sizable amount. So it's not really realistic to offset. So we need to kind of, on the next one, we need to first of all kind of avoid as much as possible and reduce the remaining one, and then where possible kind of compensate. I wanted to see if any of you had any thoughts, maybe kind of like if you want to chat on sort of the offsetting. Is offsetting the solution? Are you guys offsetting? How you choose your offsetting partner? Please type them there, because I think it's an important discussion, important conversation to have. And then finally, I like to finish with this quote because I think it's very I like it. It's kind of like, study abroad is the single most important kind of travel that people can be doing. If people don't come back change, then it's a waste of money and a waste of carbon. I think that's really good. We, as even though we're very carbon intensive as a field, I think we have a unique opportunity to promote action and a mindset of responsible and sustainable just behavior, lifelong behavioral changes. So I'd like to leave you with that quote, and then maybe kind of for you guys to think, what is the one action that you would like to commit, move forward, following this session? What is the one thing you would like to do after this session, and it's a commitment that you want to kind of take forward. Maybe just kind of finish up with that thought. If anyone wants to kind of type it in, that'd be great. Any questions you may have, any sort of information I can help, or any plans that you want to put in place, I can help you with. By all means, we're here to help, to support, and to share existing resources. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry that we went over a little bit the allocated time, and I think Molly has a few extra final pieces of information.
I do, but before I go into some of the AFS info, I just want to say a huge thank you, Danny, for sharing all of your knowledge today. It's so clear your passion for this topic comes through. And you did answer the call of like, if like who's going to be the one to do this, and you're showing up and just bringing so much education, wisdom to all these different organizations about how to take these first steps in talking and approaching this topic. So thank you so much for your time today. I just want to give a plug that we have something called the Youth Assembly with applications open now for anyone 18 to 32 years old. If you're interested in, an in-person opportunity to connect with the world on things like sustainability, this is a great event. And then if you are attending some more sessions as part of International Education Week, we have 2 more tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern and at 1 p.m. Eastern, both on the topic Educator Spotlight, thoughts and perspectives from teachers around the world, and faculty-led programming in Latin America, open for business. So they're exploring some faculty-led opportunities with our AFS partners as well. Yes, and I will connect with Danny about how to get slides to those of you who've asked. The session is recorded, so it is something that you can return back to again. Thank you so much for joining us today, and again, appreciate the flexibility on time. And I see there's a question in the chat if you're able to stay around